Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Davinia and I'm a food photographer. Today we hear from Tim, who shares his story about his mum's spaghetti bolognese. He also speaks about growing up on a council estate, having parents as missionaries, his love for cooking and wanting to pass that on to his daughter, and the beauty of fellowship. So please stay tuned to hear Tim's story, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. For joining me today. It's a pleasure having you here on DOP Food Stories. I'm really looking forward to getting into your dish, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to get to talk about just stuff that I'm passionate about as well. So yeah, I wanted to come up with something fancy and flash and something exciting, but the one that creates the most nostalgia for me has to be my mum's spaghetti bolognese. And yeah, it's as simple as that. It's I grew up with a working class white family on a council estate in southwest London, and I was blessed that my mum did a lot of home cooking. It wasn't the most fancy, it wasn't the most diverse, but I don't know, she always made an effort to kind of do things from the basics. So yeah, so that's me. My parents were missionaries in Afghanistan, so we got a lot of different food too. So I say it was kind of not fancy, but there was stuff that most people didn't get to eat where I grew up. And I could go into that if you want, but yeah, so no, it was just mum made an effort just to do it from, whereas I think this is going to make me sound terrible. A lot of the white families I knew had a very basic food vocabulary, if you get my meaning. And so at least my mum's family that I know was all overboiled veg, bland roasted meat, don't do curries, don't do Italian, don't. So I was blessed in it. My parents had traveled and they'd had a bit of experience with different foods, so it was just normal for me to have like, say, biryani or a curry or Italian food or something that was just a bit different,
So it sounds like growing up, your experience with food was really diverse, quite eclectic, very different to maybe what your peers were experiencing. So you mentioned that your parents were missionaries in Afghanistan. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. My mum, when she was quite young, had a real vision to go abroad and to do, Christian stuff and to be involved in kind of aid work or missionary work or whatever it might be. And so she ended up with a missionary organization in Afghanistan for 7 years.
Wow.
And so she was in Kabul, but then also was quite close to the border of Pakistan and India. So Afghani food is a mixture of quite a few. They're Persian in culture. So a lot of Persian food, a lot of lamb and rice, and not intense hot spices, but a lot of aromatics and stuff like that. So mum would do a dish called Kabuli pilau, which is like a basically they would do it with a whole lamb in rice that's then baked, and but obviously mum did a scaled down version of that. But and my dad was out there for a couple of years as well. That's where they met and got married. So when they came back, we grew up eating stuff that was, that my mum and dad tried to recreate with the limited ingredients that they could from that area, which is cool. This is really cool.
So you say so what did your childhood household look like when you were growing up?
So mum and dad both worked full time. I was pretty much a latchkey kid, had a key around literally had a key on a string around my neck. Would come home, and then my mum would cook in the evening, so me and my sister would kind of take care of ourselves. But so it was just dinners, pretty much. Lunches and stuff and breakfast were kind of your average fare. But so yeah, just dinner. We never sat around a dining room table because we didn't have a dining room. We just sat on the couch in the living room, but it was always served up fresh. I'd be playing out, my dad would call me in for dinner, but then I think I mentioned in some of the notes I sent you that you'd be walking up the stairs to our flat on our estate, and you just smell whatever it was that mum was cooking. Plus all the people down on our balcony.
So you got this,
they were cooking too. So we got the fufu from the lady 3 doors down. We got the fried fish from the Jamaican lady 2 floors underneath us. We got whatever it was, and it was just amazing just having that. You're like, yes, mum's cooking spaghetti tonight, and you would go home and so
and have that Yeah. So what was your earliest memory of being in the kitchen then? So am I right to assume that because your mum had some of those culinary influences, being your mum and your dad being missionaries in Afghanistan, and then I guess the estate that you lived on be maybe playing a role in like your palate and your experiences with food. What was it like for you? What was your first experience of cooking?
So it was weird because I didn't cook at home because mum did it willingly and she loved it.
Mm,
And so I think she enjoyed it to a certain degree. And so I didn't actually cook when I was at home. But what I would do was I would hang out in the kitchen and chat to mum. That was mum's counseling room. And
yeah.
so we would just chill with her in the kitchen and I just watched her crushing fresh garlic, browning off meat, softening up onions, soaking the rice, all these things that I just kind of watched and observed. And she didn't ever teach me, but I
Mm,
think, using cumin and, marjoram and, um, whatever flavor enhancer she was using to bring out, whatever flavors. And then on the estate, and that was a weird thing, is on the estate, I didn't really experience because it was mostly majority West African, West Indian people on our estate.
right.
Didn't really experience too much of the food that they ate, which is weird. We did, even though I went into their houses all the time, we were always playing out. It wasn't
Mm,
until I joined the church that we were part of, and your husband, Calvary Chapel, where I got
yeah.
to experience um, so much amazing food, because that was where we would always fellowship. And I think
Yeah.
that was the important thing, was fellowship around food.
Most
And I
definitely.
discovered incredible things. I'm like, I need to replicate that. And so I have kind of tried to replicate bits and pieces, in recent years. So I actually started cooking properly when I moved out my parents' place and got a house with my sister. We shared a house for about 3 or 4 years. And
Okay.
we'd have people around all the time. So I would experiment. I would start cooking. I would like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And I just loved it. It was like my little space to,
Create.
I don't know, just pour your heart into whatever it was you were making. And
Yeah.
that sounds awfully cheesy, but to this day, I love feeding people. I love seeing a clear plate, or
Yeah.
somebody asking for more, or yeah, it's a weird one. It's hard to explain, but I discovered that I really enjoyed, being hospitable in that way. And yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously, as you can see, I like eating what I cook as well. So
Well, so do I. But you mentioned something about fellowship, food and fellowship, and so I'd really like to touch on that a bit later. But if we go back to the dish, mum's spaghetti bolognese, and you spoke about kind of having played out, going up the stairs, smelling mum's food. Does that evoke some feelings in you? You mentioned nostalgia earlier. What do you
mm,
remember as a boy, like knowing that you were going inside to your mum's cooking, to your mum's spaghetti bolognese? I'm wondering how that makes you feel when you reflect.
it was weird because we were working class, and I look back and we were completely working class, but I thought we were middle class because we had a refurbished kitchen. It wasn't.
Right.
It was just new tiles and new
Yeah.
cabinets. Both my parents worked, and my mum cooked posh food. Because I thought spaghetti bolognese, and you ate with a spoon and a fork, and
Yeah, you thought
so
that
you
was
could wind it
elite.
around. Oh my
Yeah.
days! And we had. It's not Parmesan cheese. It's that cheap. What they can't even call it Parmesan cheese anymore because of the origin. You have to, if it's from
Right.
Parma, you can call it Parmesan.
Yeah.
Same with Parma ham or cheddar cheese, but it was like plastic fake Parmesan. But I thought it was posh.
So hold on, is it because when you put that in your notes, I wondered if it's the same cheese that my mum gave me that I loved as a kid. Is it in a little container and it's black and it's dried cheese? Is it
It's
that?
basically it's basically ground or grated, dried, some form of old cheese
Yeah, yeah,
that was
and it smells
called
like foot.
Parmesan. It,
But that was for me. So that literally evoked some feelings within me because I loved that cheese so much so. So
mm,
I've gone on to the Parmesan. Obviously, I feel like
hmm
that is elite with your spaghetti
hmm
bolognese. You have to.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
But
yeah.
just a couple of weeks ago, I picked up that small black container of cheese because I just wanted those
Yeah,
feelings back. I wanted to go
yeah,
back to
yeah, yeah,
being
yeah.
14, 15, and my mum making me spaghetti bolognese. But sorry, go on.
No, I did exactly the same a few weeks back, and I'm like, I'm gonna try. It was terrible.
I
It was
like
like
it.
it was
Guilty
like eating
pleasure.
dry skin. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so the feelings it evoked was, I don't know, it felt special. It
Yeah.
felt, and there's something, I don't know what it is about noodles. There's something Moorish or that's very, I don't know. It just evokes this thing of you. Noodles are just, it's because they're all over the planet.
Yeah.
And there's something really amazing about, well, spaghetti is basically Chinese noodles converted into an Italian culture.
Mm.
And then, yeah, yeah. So like I said, if it was spaghetti day, it was just walking past the house and having that smell. And then we'd sit down, past the cheese, and again, it
Yeah.
just felt special. And I felt like my mum was the best cook on the planet. I
You
really
still
did. I was
do.
like,
if she watches this, you do still think your mum's the best
oh
cook on
yeah,
the
my
planet,
mum
though.
is still the best
Yeah.
cook on the
Yeah.
planet. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you make your mum's spaghetti bolognese?
So I have tweaked mum's recipe because I was trying to make it a little bit more authentic. It isn't authentic even remotely, but it's my version of authentic.
Right.
So mum's version was pretty much softened onions, 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, softened and slightly browned off meat. Then she would add, I'll give you a better version in a second.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then she would add tins of tomatoes, tomato paste, oregano, basil, and bay leaf,
Okay.
and a pinch of cumin.
Right.
And then there was any extra beef stock or anything like that. And then she would just cook that through for about 15, 20, 25 minutes, however long, and then serve it with spaghetti. And I could do that version. It would still taste amazing, but I just add a few extra bits to give it a bit more depth, give it a bit more sweetness, give it a bit more,
Make it more decadent, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, and then I found out that original bolognese isn't really a meat dish as such. It's more of a ragu tomato dish with a bit of meat in it. But I can't get away from mum's one, so I still make it mainly a meat dish. So the way I cook it now is I will obviously. Do you want me to give you a rundown of the recipe or just an overview?
A rundown, please. Yeah, because I want to go and cook it. I want to steal your recipe.
So, however, if you like chunky onions, I don't. I'd like them more fine, or however you want to cut your onions. Slice up your onions. So I tend to brown off meat first.
Right.
Because if you brown off the meat, then you've got the fat in the pan. You don't need to add extra fat. So I use half pork, half beef mince. You can use just beef mince if you want, but the pork adds a bit of extra saltiness, a bit of extra depth. Sorry, let me go back. Pancetta, smoked pancetta is essential because it gives you, again, that smokiness, that saltiness, and that extra bit of fat. So anything that's worth cooking generally has good fat in it because that's where you get your flavors from salt, fat, and acid. And so your fat.
All the things bad for you, but
oh, it's terrible. It's awful. So pancetta, you brown that off, take that out of the pan, brown off your meat in batches because I found, and that's recommended by a friend of mine, if you do brown off your meat in a large batch, the steam in there, you end up more with steamed beef as opposed to I don't know if you ever cook steak. You cook a steak and you get that lovely crust on it.
Yeah.
That comes from a hot pan with very little moisture. So do your meat in batches so you get that nice golden crust on it. And then you get the fat in there as well. Once you brown off your meat, then you do your onions in the beef or in the pork fat. And it just, it's just this, it just works.
Marriage in heaven.
And then obviously once your onions are softened, which always takes longer than you expect, then, and I'm assuming that I'm talking to you because I know you know cooking.
Right.
So I'm not going into details about how you sweat your onions or how you brown off your, no. And then you do your garlic. You can slice it finely, you can chop it finely, or you can crush it. It's however you want to do your. But one thing is, don't burn your garlic because if you burn your garlic, it tastes bitter.
It's awful, and it burns terrible. So quickly. Yeah,
so quick. So do it on a low heat. Just soften it. It doesn't take long. And then 2 things that I now add that I didn't ever used to, Mum didn't ever used to, is grated carrot or finely cubed, like really finely cubed carrot. Right. And finely sliced or grated, if you can be bothered to pull out the strings, celery, because again that gives a sweetness to the dish. That's and apparently that's the traditional. Exactly, that salt and that sweet. So so once that's all softened down, I should probably read the recipe that I've got here that I sent to you, because I'm gonna skip steps otherwise.
No, don't worry. What I'll do is I'll put that on some platform somewhere. Yeah.
And so with that, then it's a case of right. So here we got red wine. So once that's all softened down, you want to deglaze. Now you can do this if you want after you do the meat. So if you've really cooked your meat and made it so it's sticking to the pan, you could throw in your half a glass of red wine to get all the stickiness off the bottom, and then you can reduce that wine down, and you get the depth of the wine there when you cook off the alcohol. So it depends on how I feel. You can deglaze it that way, or you can do it with the onions and the veg. So so then once you've done that, you've got your herbs and your aromatics and your flavor builders, as I like to think of. So oregano is your main. I found that if you use too much basil, it can get too aromatic and too floral. So you don't really want. I don't really want that as too basil-y, as you would get with the pesto or with that kind of thing. So I tend to use 1 tablespoon of oregano and half a tablespoon of basil, and then I put in, and this is because what my mum did, just to add a bit of depth, I use half a teaspoon of cumin. How do you pronounce cumin? Cumin?
I say cumin. I say cumin.
Yeah. All right. Mum said it like come in.
Come in. Cumin.
And then fresh, if you can. We've got a bay leaf in the garden, thankfully. Bay tree in the garden, bay leaf. But if the dried bay leaf is fine as well. So 1 bay leaf. Again, that's the aromatics. That just gives you a bit of floral scent to it. Because I want this to be more beefy, and I'm not using any kind of stock that I've made. I mean, I would love to use bone broth. I would love to have the time to make, to bake and roast some beef bones.
That would be amazing.
Right. It would be what makes this dish set apart from the rest. Yeah. But I ain't got that time. So 1 OXO cube is a poor man's equivalent.
But it does the job.
It does, and it gives it just a bit more beefiness and texture. Or if you don't want to use that, you can use a teaspoon of Marmite. Marmite works well, gives you a bit of depth as well. So
I've been hearing about Marmite in cooking quite a bit, actually. I think it's something I might need to venture into, because you're either I love Marmite or I hate Marmite. I'm definitely in the hate camp, but I'm assuming that when it's incorporated within cooking,
you won't know it's even there.
Different ball game. Yeah.
And I've cooked it for people that desperately hate Marmite. And then I've asked them, can you taste any Marmite in this? They're like, no, why would I? I'm like, because there's a whole teaspoon of it in there. And they're like, oh, cool. No, it's great. And then I'll put in with it. I prefer more Worcester sauce. Some people prefer less, but I put in like a good 2 teaspoons of Worcester sauce. Again, depth, acid. It kind of gives you the balance with the acid in there and the salt. One where I don't like skimping is a good quality tin tomatoes. Again, you could use plum tomatoes, blanch them, de-seed them, and then pulp them. You don't really want to pulp them too much because you still want the texture of the tomato, but you'd have to blanch them, get off the skins. So good quality tin tomatoes. And I know a lot of Italians that I've met over the years are happy to use tin tomatoes.
So what's your go-to brand for tin tomatoes?
There's you know what? I don't know the names, but I can tell from the packaging.
Same.
So there's an Italian,
the black one.
Yeah, that one's really good. Yeah, that one's the one that most supermarkets will serve here. If you want an image, I can send you afterwards of the ones that. So there's an Italian deli near my work, and they do big tins of really good. I think because they come from areas of Italy where they've got organic volcanic soil, so you get a real depth of flavor from there as well. So. Maybe that's.
Can I just say, my sister always laughs when I use that phrase, depth of flavor. She feels like it's overused, and I think she might even think it has no substance to it. But it's a real thing when we're speaking about food in terms of depth of flavor. But I can never think of another phrase to explain something. But you want something that goes beneath the surface. You don't just want something on the tip of your palate and that's it. You want something that I guess is complex and that evolves as you're eating, right? Like something that, and I can taste that, and I can taste this, and it sounds like your spaghetti bolognese would taste like that.
That was like in trendy cuisine these days. They use the word umami.
Oh, right.
And it's to do with a type of flavor that has depth to it. And it's like you have your salt, your sweet, your bitter, and they've added another one, and it's a Japanese term, and I hate it because it's so umami, but it is that. It's exactly that. It's got that down the back of your just here,
exactly.
and it has a bit of. But also, I think if you're cooking a beef dish, and it's insipid or it's thin or it's too acidic, and it doesn't have a kind of man. But then you could go too much and it becomes too heavy, flavor wise. So imagine like an oxtail that's maybe you've added. It's just been cooking for too long and it's too stodgy and it's too broken down and it's just I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's useful. But
yeah.
So tin of good quality chopped tomatoes. I was going to add 2 tins, but then because we've used the wine as well, you don't need that much extra liquid. So 1 tin should be fine. A tablespoon and a half of tomato paste. Again, it makes it, without cooking it for like 2 hours, it gives it a sauciness as opposed to a thickness. So it makes it a lot more. So that's one that I would, or cook it for 2 hours and then reduce it down. But again, this isn't a meal that I'm going to be spending all afternoon on. This is like a 45-minute kind of thing. So, and then taste it all the way through this. From when the meat is cooked, and I know I'm not going to get sick, I'm tasting this all the way through. So then salt to taste. Probably don't need it with the OXO cube and the Worcester sauce, and then let that then sit and simmer on a low heat, just bubbling back burner for 15-20 minutes. And just, something I'm realizing lately is food often tastes better the next day, even
100%.
So if you leave it and let all those flavors come together, my days,
I know
it's going to taste 100% better. So even if you want to do it for the next day, it's fine. But at least 15-20 minutes. Otherwise, again, it's not going to have the depth of flavor that.
Or what's the word that you use? Umami.
Let me confirm that with you guys, so I'm not embarrassing myself. And you might want to edit that one out.
No, you just made up a whole new word.
Yeah,
Tim.
just.
And I'm here like, okay, that word.
Yeah, that sounds really intelligent. Yeah.
So it sounds like a labor of love, and actually you've just upgraded my spaghetti bolognese. But in our household, spaghetti bolognese isn't my job anymore. It's Courtney's. That's something that he really loves to do.
That's
and for
fantastic.
him, that's a labor of love. He loves it. That's our comfort food. That's literally like, oh, I'm serving you a bowl of love right here.
Isn't that it though?
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's so comforting. But speaking about love, I want to kind of go back to something you mentioned earlier about fellowship and food being fellowship. And so I wondered if you might expand on that a bit.
Yeah, the church that I was part of for many years and still consider myself a part of it in my heart. It's called Calvary Chapel. And when I went to one of their colleges back in the day, we used to call it Calorie Chapel. Because whenever we would meet, it was always around food, and especially at our fellowship, because we had so many cultures mixed together. I think it was we would just celebrate around food. We had big cookouts, big food days. One of the strongest ones I remember is we did a public event at the Notting Hill Carnival, and anyone helping out with this event went downstairs and just got served amazing food, so that you could go back out onto the front lines and go and help out.
Prepare.
And curry goat, rice and peas, hardo bread, all of these amazing things that I got to experience because I was meeting with other people, and my understanding got elevated. My experience of culture got elevated and lifted. And I'm like, man, there's so much to experience. Yes. Whether it's Trinidadian, especially with West Indian and West African food. So whether it's Trinidadian or Jamaican or Nigerian or Ghanaian or Sierra Leonean food, or so much that's just, love it. I discovered hot pepper. I discovered, Scotch bonnets and all sorts of incredible flavors, jerk seasoning. And then obviously then that surrounding meeting with people on a level where just touching on a spiritual level, and I think food does that as well, where you should come together and you just it's hearty, it's soulish in a sense of just your hearts are just getting into it, and and talking about whatever it is you're going through and sharing, and which is what fellowship is coming together and just connecting on a level. So it was great.
There's something really intimate, isn't there, about sharing food, about literally breaking bread together. And someone mentioned it in a previous podcast about it being a vehicle or a means of starting conversation with people. And especially when it's food from a culture which you may not be familiar with, or that's a culture that's not your own, it really does kind of open the doors for getting to know people on a deeper level, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that's taught me to, I think it's very easy to go, oh, that looks bad. And then you could say that, especially as a white male from London, you could say that about other cultures. And it's something somebody taught me when I was quite young. And I'm thankful that it didn't ever grate on me. It just felt right. It's not wrong. It's just different. Or it's not bad. It's just not how you're used to. And so it kind of helped me to be open to, I'll try that.
Yeah.
And whether it's something that's food wise or culture wise, I'm blessed because I've had the opportunity to mix and to be, like I said earlier, elevated. I'm better off because I've experienced all these different cultural things. It's not been a negative on any level. It's been a positive, and that goes with food as well. It definitely is one where it's like, so for instance, egusi stew. If I was to look at that,
what stew? Sorry,
is it egusi stew or egusi soup?
Oh, egusi, yeah, egusi.
Yeah, help me there with my pronunciation. Yeah. It doesn't look appetizing to me.
Yeah.
But when I tried it, and I loved it. There's other things, chicken foot soup, cow foot soup. I've tried it, manish water, all these things. I'm like, I will try it once. Yeah. And then if I really don't like it, and I think I would say 9 times out of 10, it's been something I'm like, that is wicked, that is banging, I'll try that again. And you end up expanding your food vocabulary more and more and more. And I'm richer and I'm better off because of that. So, yeah.
Amazing. And so in terms of food, and so you've got a daughter called Grace. How old is she now?
She's now nearly 18 months.
How important is it to you to kind of pass on your passion for cooking to Grace?
It's really important. And it's really important to me that she has a varied palate. How you implement that, though, is not as straightforward. I'm discovering. And I don't know why. I thought if you eat it around her, if you share it with her, she's going to love it.
Yeah.
I'm trying all sorts. I'm trying from pickled stuff to stronger flavors, a little bit of chili here and there, a little bit of pepper. Man, she loves beige food.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So so now it's like getting her onto more salad stuff. So let's say you gave her tomatoes, and one day she'll love something for about a week, and the next day she won't touch it for a month. Yeah. And we're trying to figure that out. So I think it's just being patient. And I think as her palate develops as a child, just more texture as opposed to flavor at the moment.
Yeah.
I think there's time for that. You know what I mean? And
of course.
I think observing my sister who has 4 little girls, now they're starting to discover new things that they like. Whereas when they were my daughter's age, they wouldn't touch anything but pasta.
Yeah.
And that's kind of helped me and go, oh, it's okay, there's time. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, my child won't touch anything but ... And it's a bit discouraging because I don't want a child who's fussy. But I also don't want to have a war over food to have this kind of food. How do I explain it? Just don't want to create any anxiety around food, whether it's eating too much or eating too little. I want to kind of, well, okay, that's okay. You know what I mean? We'll work on that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to try. I'm not going to push her, but so she won't eat meat on any level. Okay. You try and put chicken in something, unless it's ground up and hidden.
Yeah, then she won't.
Straight out.
Right.
But she eats egg. So that's why we get a protein in. She eats a little bit of fish. But chicken, beef, lamb, pork, nothing. She just does not like the texture. It's just too...
Yeah.
What?
Well,
I don't know.
I think, so you mentioned your sister's girls, and I think take some encouragement from that you're not alone, and that she's only, did you say 17, 18 months?
Mm.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of time, and actually it's something that I'm going through with Josiah at the moment, who's 4 years old, and it's hugely
Mhm.
frustrating, isn't it? But I think more than me trying to get him to eat at this stage, I do want him to appreciate just the value of food, but the cultural
Mhm.
heritage of it as well. And by God's grace, we've got plenty of time to be able to teach him that. And so hopefully when
Absolutely.
he's 16 years old, he'll turn around. Yeah, we can be having these conversations with him. I remember when you wouldn't eat dot, 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 all of the various things that he wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
But are there any kind of customs or traditions that your mum and your dad passed on to you growing up that you'd like to pass on to Grace?
Not really, because we weren't that structured. Other than mum always made everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And you know, that's something that we do anyway as a family. So, um, I'm the predominant cook in our house. One, it's because I enjoy it, and two, it's that I think I have a bit more experience and confidence with that as well. So, yeah, just I think that she appreciates that it doesn't have to come out of a packet or out of a tin or out of a can or out of a whatever, out of the freezer always, which is a godsend actually with kids as a freezer. But and actually it's not much harder. I think a lot of people think, oh, it must be so much more difficult actually doing it from scratch. It isn't. And it's, apart from so just putting in the effort. I think of just good balanced fruit, veg, meat, whatever your food groups are, and it just makes something feel a lot more full. And
Yeah. So your passion and your knowledge in terms of food really shines through. Is there anywhere that people can catch you on, and so that they can, if they were interested, that they might be able to follow you? I don't know if your Instagram's open or not
I've got
actually.
a lot of foodie stuff on my Instagram, which is TJ McBrien is my Instagram handle. And I'm on YouTube. I've recently, so when we first went into lockdown, like hard lockdown, I had like 5 weeks off work. I discovered sourdough bread. So I
I
went nuts for
saw.
sourdough bread
Yeah.
for a while. And now I just don't have time, because you need time. So,
Yeah.
but I've got stuff on YouTube. I've got some, I need to work more on it. So I've got like a really good hummus recipe on my YouTube channel, Tim McBrien, with some music as well. So if you want to check
Yeah.
that out. But yeah, so I intend to add some more bits and pieces to that. So recently I've been cooking a lot of curry goat, because I found a really good butcher's near me that do, it's curry, it's mutton really.
Yeah.
And I found a wicked recipe that I love. It's just very authentic, very genuine, and it's excellent. So I intend to do that, but I'm trying to master it first, because I don't want to get judged, because I
Yeah.
know that a white boy cooking Jamaican food,
You
some
need to
people
get
might
it
call it
right.
some people might call it cultural appropriation. I call it cultural appreciation, and
Okay.
because
I
it's
like that
definitely
distinction.
appreciated much,
Right.
much, much. It's a celebration, as opposed to trying to make it my own or trying to corrupt it in any way. I want it to be as authentic. Saying
Yeah.
that, the guy who is from the West Indies puts ketchup in it, but I don't think that's too foreign. It's wicked. So that's my
Yeah.
next project, is I'd love to do that, and that get rice and peas down just right, and
Yeah.
not have everybody on the internet cuss me out. So
But I think that no, but I think that you make a good point, is that it's cultural appreciation. And I think that's the key thing, is being able to appreciate where the roots, where it originates from, and not claiming to be the master, the expert on a dish in which doesn't originate from your culture. But that doesn't mean that you can't implement that within your catalogue, your arsenal of cooking. I think that it actually is it can be quite a beautiful thing. So I look forward to seeing that. I look forward to, well, I think I'm already following your YouTube channel, so I'm looking forward to seeing more content.
should be
That
good.
would be amazing. And I've got one last question for you. So we are in
Yeah.
national lockdown number 3 at the moment, or at the time of this recording. And so when lockdown does eventually ease, what would be the first restaurant that you go to?
Wow. It's so funny. It's been so long, and me and my wife used to go out. We'd have date nights and it's since having a little one, and most of her life has been in lockdown. So date nights have had to be local.
Yeah.
But if you were just to say, Tim, what do you want? I want to find the wickedest ramen place in Soho and just go and just destroy some good Japanese food, because around
Yes.
here, I live in Enfield, there's nothing like that. or maybe a good teppanyaki grill or some sushi, something that's just fresh and aromatic. And yeah, that's what I would like. I think if it was my wife, I think she would appreciate just going out for a good curry. But I'm trying to branch out her experiences as well. So and she's great. She's up for anything and tries most things. So
yeah, amazing. Well, Tim, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Like I said, I look forward to seeing more coming from you on your YouTube channel. And yeah, it's just been really, really lovely speaking to you today.
It's my pleasure, really.